What's up guys, I'm back with another video and today I'm going to show you how to make Blackjack into your Discord bot. Now if you remember from the last video, we kind of turned our bot into an economy bot. We now have users being able to track their balance, and now we're going to add a way for them to earn coins but also gamble coins. This has probably been the most requested command I have ever gotten, which is to create a Blackjack game in Discord. And as you can see right here guys, this is how it works. So simply all they have to do is do the /blackjack command. They're going to enter their wager, which will be the amount they want to bet, and then from there they're going to play the game. They get to hit or stand, and if you don't know the rules of Blackjack, then you should go research about Blackjack. It's pretty simple. There is just a few rules, and we're going to implement those rules along the way in the bot. And before we step into the code guys, don't forget, if you ever want to get the source code for this video or any video that's on my channel that I have source code available for, you can go to evenmorecode.com and you can buy the source code straight from there. As you can see, you can just hover over any tutorial video. Here's all my tutorial videos, or you can just buy the direct source code that you want. There's also a link to join the Discord and subscribe to my YouTube channel. So let's get right into the code guys. First things first guys, is we're going to want to make a new command. Now if you remember from last time, our users currently have a balance, and that balance represents how much money they have. And I created this balance.js command in the last video. In the economy folder where I store my commands, you can put this of course anywhere you want. I just have this file structure of subfolders to keep my commands organized. I'm going to make a new command called blackjack.js. There we go, blackjack.js, and here is where we're going to start our new command. So first things first, we're going to want to make a normal slash command. So we're just going to say const, and we're going to say /command builder, and we're going to take this from require and then discord.js. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Then we do module.exports equals, and then have a data attribute, new /command builder. And then we're going to set the properties on there. So set name. We're going to call this Blackjack. You can call this command whatever you want. Maybe you don't even want to call it Blackjack. Maybe you want to rename the game to something else. That's totally fine with me. But I'm going to call it Blackjack. So that's what the user will have to type in Discord. Then I'm going to set a description. And my description will just be starts a new game of Blackjack. There we go. Then let's add an integer option. So this will be their wager, so that they'll have to specify how much money they want to bet that they're going to win, right? So we're going to take the option in an arrow function, and we're going to set the properties like so. So set name, we're going to call this the wager. You can also call this bet or amount, whatever you want. I'm going to then do set description. And I'm going to say amount you would like to bet. Then I'm going to say set min value. So we don't want them to bet 0 actually. So let's just set this to 1. They have to at least set 1. And then we're going to set a max value. You don't have to set a max value, but just a warning. If you have some lucky people in your server, they might be able to completely destroy your economy by winning a lot of money, So that's up to you if that's something you want to control or not. You can remove the max and min values if you want, but I'm going to set a max of 100. And then I'm going to set required to be true, which just means that we always want to require them to specify how much they want to wager for them to use this command. Then add a comma, then we're going to go back here and we're going to say execute, and we're going to say async. And this is going to be a function. We're going to take in interaction, and then we're going to take in user data. If you don't know where this user data is coming from, check not my last video, but the video right before the balance command, where we introduce user profile and how we pass the user data to each command. And then now we have access to all the users. So here we go. First things first, guys, I'm actually going to use an API in this command, and I'm going to show you that API right here. So if you go down here, it's called the Deck of Cards API. What this is going to allow us to do is make a call to one of these commands. It's going to give us a shuffled deck of cards, and we'll be able to pull cards from that deck. Now, we could do this in our own JavaScript, but just to make this command a little bit simpler, that way we don't have to worry about shuffling the deck, we don't have to worry about taking cards out of the deck. It will handle that all for us, and it tracks with a deck ID, and it will give us however many cards that we specify. So if we want to draw one card from the deck, we can just say count equals 1, and we'll draw one card from the deck. That way we don't have to worry about duplicate cards, and we don't have to worry about sorting the cards. Every single time they make a new game, we can have a new shuffled deck so that each game is completely unique and none of them are the same, and there's no algorithm that your users can figure out of how the cards are shuffled and blah 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 blah, right? So this is just the way I'm going to do it. And of course you can simulate this if you want to take out the API. You can always write your own, but this is a completely free API and this works pretty well. I've never had any issues with it. So here we go. Since we're using an API, I'm going to wrap this whole thing in a try and catch. So I'm going to say try and then catch. I'm going to catch the error, and in the catch we're just going to say return await interaction dot edit reply, and we're going to send the error dot message. And so this will also allow us to throw errors within here, and it will always just return as the message to the user in Discord. So let's go back to the try, and this is where we're going to write the logic of our command. So first things first, let me close this terminal for now since we don't need it. First things first, I'm going to say await, and I'm going to say interaction.defer reply. And this again is because we're going to do some logic here, and also we're going to make some API calls. Sometimes if there's some delay or bad internet, there could be a delay in when the API responds. It might take a couple seconds. Hopefully it will take less than a second. But we have to keep aware that some of our users might not have the best internet. So we're just going to defer the reply and say, okay, hold on Discord, we are going to reply. Just give us a couple seconds and we will reply soon. That way it doesn't time out. I'm going to add some comments here just so you guys can review the code and understand what's happening. Next, we're going to want to retrieve the entered value for the wager. And the way we do that is we just make a variable const wager, and we equal interaction.options. And then we have to specify what kind of option we want. So we'll say get integer, and then we'll specify the name. And I'm going to say wager here because that's what the name of the wager is called. So this has to match whatever name is here. And then this variable will now store the wager that the user entered. So now, what if the user entered a wager that's above their balance? Okay, we don't want any infinite money glitches here. So then we're going to check if the user has enough coins to wager. And then we'll say simple if statement, if wager is greater than user data.balance, then we're going to throw an error. And remember, all of our errors are going to be caught here and then sent as a reply. So throw error, and then you can specify whatever your error message you want. I'll just do something simple. You do not have enough coins. You can be more specific than that. You can add their balance to the message if you want, but I'm just going to go with that. Next step, we're going to want to create a new deck and then draw 4 cards. And why do we want 4 cards? We want to start the game where the dealer has 2 cards and the player has 2 cards. So we're going to take 4 cards off the newly shuffled deck, to give 2 of those to the dealer and give 2 of those to the player. Now to do this, I'm going to write some helper functions. Okay, we could do the logic all inside this file, but trust me guys, that will get very long and a little bit complicated and maybe a little hard to read. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go over to our file system here, and I'm actually going to make a new folder, right? I'm going to make a new folder and I'm going to call this helpers. This is going to store all of our helper functions for each command or whatever. We can also make a general helper function file too, but this one will be specific to Blackjack. I'm going to make a new file and I'm going to call this Blackjack helper.js, and then I have a new JS file here. And first, we're going to want to create a function that we can call that will create a new deck for us, which we'll be calling that API, right? So what we're going to want to do is let's make a new variable for the API URL. And we'll get that API URL from this website. And by the way, guys, I'll have the link to this website in the description below. But basically, the base URL that we'll want to take is this first part. So it's the deck of cards api.com/api/deck. I'm going to copy that, paste that in here. This is going to be the base URL, and then we can specify what we want further in the exact function. So we're going to make a new async function, and it's going to be called create new deck. We're going to say const deck data equals, and guess what? We're going to need an import here. So we're going to have to say const Axios. If you don't have Axios installed, I installed this in a previous tutorial in this bots series. But if you don't have it, you can always go to the bottom and you can do npm I Axios, and you see I'll do that, and that will also update it if you have it and it's outdated. So then we're going to want to say await, and I put this in parentheses, and you'll see why in a little bit, but I did put this in parentheses. Don't miss those parentheses, they are important. Axios.get, and then we're going to put in the URL. So I use backticks to specify a URL where I'm going to put a variable. So backticks and then money sign to specify a variable with curly braces. I'm going to say API URL. They have a draw a card command already that allows us to specify a deck ID and then how much we want to draw. And then there is a tip right here that says replace deck ID with new to create a shuffled deck and draw cards from that deck in the same request. So that way we don't have to call a shuffle deck and draw. We can do it right here in the first command. So I'm just going to take what we have here. So it's going to be deck ID, but we're going to replace it with new. So /new /draw, and then we'll just copy this part. /draw/count, and then do you remember how many cards we want here? We want to start with 4, right? 2 for the dealer and 2 for the player. And then we're going to do .data on the outermost parentheses. That's why I added parentheses here. I also mentioned this in my API video, but the way Axios works is basically they wrap the entire response inside of a property called data. So anytime you use Axios, you'll want to do .data to pull the data out of the response. So now we're just going to check if deck data exists in case of an error. So you always want to be handling errors, guys, properly, so your bot doesn't completely break every time there's an error. So we'll say if not deck data, or if not, and you'll see that we have a little property here called success, and it will be true if it's successful, false if not. So we'll say also we want to check if it's not successful. So if it exists or if it's not successful, then we're just going to throw an error. So we're going to say throw error, and then we're going to pass a message. We're going to say error, unable to draw a new card. Or we can say unable to draw new cards. That's fine. You can make something more general than that. And then I'm just going to return deck data here. So then let's just export this function. So module.exports, and we're going to return create new deck. So there we go. We're going to add more functions to this as we go. And so let's go back to our Blackjack function and let's import that. So we'll say const, and we're going to get create new deck. We're going to get this from require and then specify where. We're going to go to helpers /blackjack helper. Okay, we got the create new deck function, and remember that is an async function, so we'll have to await it if we want it to work properly. So what we can do is we'll say const deck data equals await create new deck, and we'll await that so that API request will go, all our code will pause here, and it will resume once it's done. We supposedly will have data that looks like this. We'll have a deck ID, and we'll have cards, which is an array of all the cards, and we should have 4 cards in there if it's all working properly. Now what we're going to do is we're going to say define variables for Blackjack game, and we are going to just define all of our variables that we want here that we're going to use throughout this code. So first, let's get the user ID. we're going to get that from interaction.user.id. We're also going to want the guild ID, and we're going to say interaction.guild.id. Okay, those are simple, and the reason why we need those is because we're going to use the user ID and the guild ID to update their balance. Next, we're going to say const deck ID. So this is going to be the ID of the deck, and we're actually going to get this from deck data, which we just created, and it's going to be under deck ID property right here. So it'll be deck data dot deck underscore ID. And then we're going to create two new variables that are going to be empty arrays. One that is going to be for the dealer and one's for the player. So const dealer hand equals an empty array because they're going to start with no cards. And we're going to say const player hand equals empty array. Now we have all of our variables set up. Let's continue with the command, right? So we're going to first subtract the wager from the user's balance. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to make yet another helper function. So if you remember from a previous video, I made user helper.js, and that's in a DB. So these are going to be commands all related to DB interactions. Get or create user, we have increment command counter, and we're going to make a new one in here called decrease balance. So it's going to be an async function, decrease balance, and it's going to take a user ID just like the command counter and a server ID, and then we're going to say await user.update1 update one. We're going to pass in the user ID. We're going to pass in the server ID, and then we're going to want to increase their balance by the negative amount that we pass in. So we'll take another parameter here, amount, and we're going to say negative amount. So we're increasing by the negative, which would be aka the same as decreasing their balance, right? The negative amount. So then we're going to export this function. We're going to say decrement balance. Let's go back to the Blackjack command and let's import that function. So we'll say const dec balance, and we get that from the DB folder. So let's go back out DB/user helper, and there we go. We got the decrement balance. So now we can go down here and we're going to subtract. So we're going to say await decrement balance. We're going to pass in the user ID, which we have handy dandy right here. User ID, we're going to have the guild ID, which we also have handy. And then we're going to enter the amount. And the amount is going to be the amount that they wagered. So we have the wager right there. That's basically it. So next, we're going to initialize hands with 2 cards each. So again, we want to give the dealer 2 cards and the player 2 cards. To do this, we can do it many ways, but I'm just going to do the simplest way and hopefully the easiest to understand way. I'm just going to do a for loop. So I'm going to say for let, or we can do const here, for const card of deck data dot cards. So remember, we have the cards property from the data, and that's going to be an array of objects, and each object represents a card, and we have all this data. So we're going to use the value in the suit in order to add this to each player's hand. So const card of deck data dot cards, then we're going to say const card value equals, and then let's make a new function that we're going to use many times. Let's go to blackjack helper.js, and we're going to make a new function, and this function is going to be called extract card value. So we're going to say function extract card value. We're going to take a card, which will be the object from the response from the deck data, right? And we're going to say return. It's going to be a string literal because we're going to add variables, and we're going to say if it's not a number, if card value is not a number, and remember card value is here, so it could be a 5, but it also could be, for example, king, jack, queen, or ace, and those are not a number, right? So if it's not a number, then we're just going to want to take the first letter. So if it's a king, for example, if it's king, we're going to want to just take the K. If it's jack, then we're just going to want to take the J, so on and so forth. Ace, only take the A. But if it's the number, then we want the whole entire number. So if it's not a number, meaning it must be a letter, then we're going to say card value, take the first index. Otherwise, just use the card value, which will be the number in that case. So we're going to put that value there, and then right after that, right next to that, we're going to put in the suit. And the suit comes in this all caps word. It's going to be hearts, spades, clubs, or diamonds. But you're probably not going to want to add hearts, clubs, spades, or diamonds, all caps, right in the value that you're going to display to the user. Instead, I think what looks a little bit nicer is to use emojis. So we can create a object that maps each word to the emoji. So I'm going to put spades and we'll add the spade emoji there. I'm going to do hearts. We'll add the hearts emoji there. And then diamonds. We'll add the diamonds emoji there. And then clubs. And we'll add the clubs emoji there. And let's add those right now. So if you go on Mac, I don't know how you're going to do it on Windows. You can just look it up on Google and copy paste. But I'll just go to emojis. And then we'll just look up here, club, for example, or I guess I'll do spade first. So spades, I'll just put the spade emoji there. Then hearts. I don't know how you use emojis on Windows, but what you can do is you can always just go to Google and then copy and paste from there. Then we're going to want diamonds. We'll just take this diamond and then clubs. There we go. Okay. So then we have this object that maps all these strings, which is all caps, to the emoji. And that's what we're going to want to put here right next to the card value. So it will be K, for example, for king, or 10 clubs. And we're going to put that emoji. So we'll map that here. So we'll just say suits, which is that object. And we're just going to get the index for card.suit. So it will just map exactly whatever's returned here. So if it's a spades, it's going to go here, look this up, give me this value, and enter it here right next to the value. So that's our new function that's going to extract the card value. And I'm going to export that. Let's go back to blackjack.js, and we're going to say const value, card value, is equal to extract. So you're going to have to import that here. Extract card value from the Blackjack helper, extract card value, and then we're just going to pass in the card, which is right here. The card that we're looping through, all the cards, it's an object. So now we get the card value, and we're going to say if dealer's hand dot length is not equal to 2, then we're going to push it in to the dealer's hand. Push in card value. But once the dealer's hand does reach 2, then we want to push the other 2 into the player. So I'll just say else player hand dot push card value. So the first 2 will go into dealer's hand. Once it reaches 2, then push it into the player's hand. And since we know we're getting 4 cards, it will be 2 here, 2 here. Both of their arrays will have 2 cards in it. So for example, this one might be K spade. The other might be 9 spade. This one could be 10 spade. And then this one could be 2 spade, right? It will look something like this. Obviously, it won't be all spades, but you get the deal. That's how we formatted our data. So by this point, it will be set. And then now we can generate the starting embed just to show the user what they have, right? So we'll say generate starting embed, and we'll say const embed equals, and we'll set a title for the embed, and I'll just put playing blackjack. Playing blackjack. Description. Set the description if you would like. I'll just say it's kind of specify the rules of blackjack. So I'll say if you get exactly 21, then that will be a blackjack. resulting in triple your money. If the dealer busts, which means they went over 21, or you win by value, you will double your wager. If you bust, which means you win over 21, or lose to the dealer by value, you will lose your wager. And then I'll just say, be aware that the game will time out after 60 seconds. And you can always increase that limit, but I'm going to do 60 seconds because it should not take the user longer than 60 seconds to play a game of blackjack. Okay. And then we'll do fields, and we're going to add the fields. And here we're going to display the cards for the dealer and the user. So the first field will be name dealer cards, and then value. Then we're going to format the cards, and we're going to make another helper function. So let's go back to Blackjack helper, and we're going to make a new one, a new function called function format cards. And this is going to take in an array of cards. And then we're going to take an option called hide, and which will default to false. And why do we want this is because in blackjack, usually, the dealer shows one of their cards, but the other one is hidden. And that's what we're going to simulate here. So if it's hidden, if hide is true, then we'll only show the first card. Otherwise, we'll show both the cards or all the cards, not necessarily only two cards. So we'll say let cards, and we're going to spread. We're going to make a shallow copy of array of cards. So do 3 dots for spread. We're going to say if hide is true, then cards is equal to cards.map. So we're going to map over every card which I'll represent as C, also taking the index. If the index is equal to 0, so if this is the first card, then we're just going to put C, so whatever the value of the card is, which will be like K spade emoji. Otherwise, if it's not the first index, then we'll just put question mark. So all other cards besides the first one will be hidden. And then that's just handling the case of if we're hiding or not. And so then to put all the cards, we're going to put double quotes here and then 3 backticks. And this is just how in Discord you put code text into Discord. And the reason why we use code text is because code text is the only way that Discord will allow you to put spaces, essentially, right? It will allow us to format things more properly. If we try to do this in regular text, then Discord's going to screw us over by removing all of our spaces. So I'm going to use 3 backticks here, plus the content, and then plus 3 backticks. So we'll put a little middle section, and this will go into a code block inside of Discord. And we're just going to say codes.join, and we're just going to join with 4 spaces, I guess. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that way it will listen to our spaces. There we go. And then we're just going to return format cards, export that out of here. Let's import format cards from Blackjack helper. And in the value column for this field of dealer cards, we'll just say format cards. Dealer hand. And we're going to say true for the hide. And then we're going to add another field, and this one will be, it could be player cards, or I'll just say your cards since the person who used the command. And then I'll say value, format cards, same function, dealer, actually not dealer hand, this time it will be player hand, and we won't pass anything in. You could pass false, but remember I defaulted it to false. So therefore we're not going to hide any cards there. Don't forget a comma there. So now we got the embed. I think maybe we should take a break real quick and take a look at what this actually looks like. So let's just create the message. And we're going to say message equals await interaction dot edit reply. Edit reply. We'll say embeds. Pass an array with the single embed. And we can make this ephemeral. I'm going to make this ephemeral. ephemeral equals true. And I'm just going to send this to the specific user. Although I think it is kind of fun to watch people play blackjack in your server to make it a little bit more lively. So actually, let's take ephemeral out, and we'll try to do it without making ephemeral. Okay, and then const message, and then that's it. So let's deploy this command just to take a peek at what's happening. So let's deploy command, deployed it, let's start the bot up, and let's head over to Discord. So now that we're in Discord, what we're going to want to do is the /blackjack command. It's going to take a wager. Let's check our balance real quick. Balance, we have 30. Okay, so we're going to do /blackjack. Let's just wager. It doesn't really matter. It just has to be, or let's check the error command. So let's do 40, and it'll say that there was an error while executing this command. Okay, that's not what we wanted to see. And it says error is undefined. Okay, ERR is undefined, which probably means I did ERR.message, but not error.message. So I'll just change that real quick. Restart the bot. Go back to Discord. Let's try blackjack. Wager 40 coins, and it says you do not have enough coins. So that's working. That's a good error message. It's working. Okay, and then let's try blackjack again. And let's do a number less than 30. Well, let me do -1. No, it says 1 to 100. Let's try wager 10. And there we go. It starts it up. It says playing blackjack, gives us the entire description, shows dealer cards, which shows a 3 and a heart. And then it shows 2 question marks, which is the hidden card. It shows your cards, queen of clubs and 4 of clubs. Okay. Nice. So this gives us 2 new cards, and you'll see if we replay this again, it's going to give us new cards every time because that's that shuffled deck. So here's what we have so far, right? We have dealed the cards, and we're ready to start the blackjack logic. And also, guys, this is just how I display the cards. You guys might be able to come a little bit more creative. The good thing, guys, about how we're setting up this blackjack command and with the helper functions is if you guys don't like how I'm displaying these cards, don't worry. You can just go into the helper function, blackjackhelper.js, go to the format cards, and you can just edit this function, and the whole rest of the code will still work. You can modify how it's formatted. So that's a good thing if you guys don't like this way of showing it. This is just the only way I thought of it. It's something simple and something that you can do in Discord because Discord is very text-based. It would be a lot harder to add multiple images. In fact, almost impossible. So we're just going to go with this. But yeah, as you can see, it deals new cards. The next thing we got to do is add the buttons, right? We want to be able to add buttons for standing or hitting for the player. So let's go to blackjack and let's create those buttons. So right between the embed and the message, I'm going to add some new buttons. So I'll say const hit button. So this will be the button for if they would like to get another card. I'll say equals new button builder, which we'll have to take all the way from discord.js at the top. Button builder. We're also going to want to need button style while we're here. And then also we're going to need action row builder. And I think that's it for now. Let's go back down. Create a new button. So hit button equals new button builder. And then we're going to set custom ID, and we're going to set that to hit, all lowercase. Then we're going to set label, and I'll do all caps. This is what the user will see. And then I'm going to set the style, and I'm going to make this button green, which will be button style.success. So the hit button will be green. We're going to make another button, and I'm going to call this stay button. Equals new button builder. We're going to set custom ID to stay. Set label to stay all caps. And then set style. We're going to say button style again. Dot. And I'm going to make this one red if they want to stay, which kind of means the game is basically over. The dealer is going to do their turn after you stay. So const stay. So let's make a row now. So we'll say const row equals new action row, the thing we just imported, row builder, and then we're going to say dot add components, and this is going to be an array. We're just going to pass the hit button, and we're going to pass the stay button. So we made a new row with 2 buttons, and then we'll just pass this row as components, and pass row. Same way we did with embed, row for components, right? So there we go. Let's check what this looks like now. So we're going to restart the bot, go over to Discord, start a Blackjack, and there we go. We have the hit button and we have the stay button. Right now, of course, the buttons are not going to do anything. We're not collecting any kind of response, but we have the buttons there. The next step, of course, is to collect the buttons. And how do we do that? We have to make a message collector. Next step, below the message, we're going to want to say fetch reply inside of the message. When we add it, we're going to say fetch reply equals true. And that's because we're going to listen to the reply of the message, or at least a collector on the message. We're going to say const collector equals message dot create message component collector. We're going to say component type like that. And then we're going to need component type. So I think we'll have to import that from discord.js. Let's go back all the way to the top. I'm going to move these down so they're all visible. Okay, so component type is what we need. Whoops, there we go. Need a comma here. So import component types from discord.js. And then component type dot, and then we're going to say button. That's the kind of component we're looking for here. And then we're going to set a time. This will be when the message basically expires, when the game is over. If they take too long, you can set this to however much time you want. But like I said in the description of the embed up here, I'm going to time it out after 60 seconds. So this will be in milliseconds. So it'll be 60 and then 3 zeros, 1, 2, 3. So 60,000 milliseconds. So that's going to be our collector. And then we're going to say collector dot on collect async. It's going to be an async function. We're going to take the interaction. Then it's going to be an arrow function. And then here is where we're going to write all the logic. What happens, what button they click, and what we're going to do if they hit the button. Before that, right before the collector dot on, we're going to make a new variable called win result. And we're going to set win result to be dealer. So by default, we're going to say the dealer has won. And then in here, we'll change if the dealer has won or not. Well, if the player has won or if it's a draw, we'll set that in here. But we just want to default to the dealer. So let's write the logic for the game now. So this is the fun part, right, guys? This is the fun part. First, let's see if they hit the hit button. And the way we check that is we say if so the interaction dot custom ID, the thing they clicked on, if that is hit, because remember the custom ID we set for the hit button is hit. So if the custom ID is hit, then we're going to want to handle if player chose to hit. Otherwise, we're going to handle if player chose to stay. Okay, so let's just take each one of these one by one. If they clicked on hit, what we're going to want to do is draw a new card. What are we going to need for that? We're going to need to go to the helper functions and write a new helper function for them drawing a new card. So right below here, I'll do another async function. So async function draw new card. We'll take in a deck ID and we'll say const deck data equals, very similar to what we have up here. Very, very similar. We're going to say await axios.get backticks. Going to add that API URL once again. We're going to say slash. We're going to pass the deck ID. So same exact thing as here, except this time it won't be new. It will be the deck ID. And then slash draw. and then we'll just specify how many we want, and we're only going to want one card, so we'll say count one. We'll take the data from here and pass that into deck data. If deck data doesn't exist, same as before, or if deck data is not successful, so .success, then we're going to throw an error, and that error you can make say whatever you want. We can just say error, unable to draw new card. Pretty simple. And then we're going to use the function from up here. We're going to return extract card value. So we'll say return extract card value. This would be deck data dot cards, same way we got them before, but this will just be the first card because there should only be one card inside this response. Again, it will look like this, cards. We only want the first card, and then from this card we're going to extract the value, so it's going to be in this case 6 and then the heart emoji. And we're just going to return that from this function. So it literally just gives us a new card value. So I'm going to export this, so draw a new card, go back to Blackjack, and that's exactly what we want to do if they click hit. We want to draw a new card. So we could say const card value equals await draw new card. We'll have to import from up here, draw new card. Go back down here, and then what do we have to pass in there? We have to pass the deck ID. And if you remember, we have a deck ID saved in our little variable section, deck ID. So this is the deck ID so that this knows exactly what the deck we're pulling the cards from. So we get that new card value, and then we're just going to append that to the player's hand. So push card value. And then now we can update the embed field. So embed.fields equals, so we're going to add a new field and we're going to say dealer cards. So this is just replacing the old one, but it will be exactly the same. So format cards, we're going to pass in dealer hand, and then we're still going to want to pass true here so that the second card is hidden. And that's because this is still the player's turn, right? If they hit, they can still hit again. The second one, we're going to do your cards. And we're going to say value format cards, same exact thing, player hand. We're not going to hide anything. And so now by this time, player hand will have that new card value. We'll update their hand in the embed. So now let's just see await I.update. Let's just see if this is working. So we'll pass in the embeds and we'll say embed. So now let's check it out. Let's try it out. Let's restart the bot here. Let's go to Discord. So we'll start it. It says you do not have enough coins because we decremented the balance, so we don't have any coins. So for just testing purposes, we're going to want to get rid of this line, comment this line out. I don't want to decrement the balance right now, and I don't care if the wager. So I'm just going to comment those lines out. The error handling and the decrement, restart the bot so that we get the updated code running. Okay, let's run that Blackjack command. Okay, so here we got a jack and a 3, which would be equal to 13 because all face cards are equal to 10. So I'm going to hit there and I get a new card. It edits the embed and I have a new card. So there we go. That's working. And if we hit again, it should keep going, keep going. Keep going, and this will just infinitely go. Never have duplicate cards, but it will infinitely go. But we don't want it to infinitely go, right guys? Because we would bust by this queen, right? Because this would be 13. Then we'd add 1 for ace, because an ace can be an 11 or a 1. So it would be 14 here. Then we get a 10, which would be 24, which is over 21. And the game should be over right here. The dealer would have won by that point because we went over 21 and we shouldn't be able to have any more cards. So now we're going to have to do the logic for that. We're going to have to add the logic and we're going to have to check each time they draw a new card if they lost or if they're able to keep going. Or maybe they hit Blackjack. That's also a possibility. So let's add some code here. And we're just going to say check for bust or win. And so we're just going to do an if statement. And again, guess what we're going to need, guys? We're going to need a helper function. We're going to need a helper function that decides if it was a bust or not. Simple, right? Simple, simple, simple. We just need to check if it's a bust. And how do we do that? We're going to make two functions here, okay? First, we're going to make a function called getMinValue, getMinHandValue. And the reason why we need this, getMinHandValue, we're going to use this in multiple places. It's going to take an array of cards. This is just going to check what the minimum value a hand can be. So if the player is under 21 by the minimum value. The reason why I say minimum value is because remember, in Blackjack, an ace can be a 1 or an 11. So we don't want to make the user bust if we're counting all aces as 11. We only want to bust if we're counting all aces as 1s, because that's the minimum possible value it can be. So what we got to do is we say let value equal 0, and then we're just going to loop through each card. So let's say const card of cards. We're going to say const card val. So this is going to be the actual value, meaning the number of the card. We're just going to say card.slice. And we're going to slice from 0 to -2. So this will slice off the emoji, right? So we want to get rid of the emoji. We want to check what the value of the card is. Is it a king? Is it a jack? Is it a queen? We don't want to include the suit. We'll say if is not a number, same thing that we did before. So if the card value, so if it's a K, if it's Q, then we're going to handle that differently. If it is a number, then we're just going to add the number to the total. So we're just going to do card val. So this is value plus equals. So we're going to add the card value and equal it to value. So value equals card value plus value. And then this little plus just turns a string that's a number into an actual number, right? So if it's a 10 as a string, it's going to turn it into a number. If you don't understand that, don't worry. It's totally fine. Just know that this gives us what we want, right? This is going to add the number from the card 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those numbers, it's going to add it to the value. We're just adding up all the cards that the user has. But if it's a face value or an ace, then we need to handle those separately. So we know that it's not a number in this position. We're going to say if card value is specifically an A, so if it's an ace, then we're going to count all aces as 1. So we're going to plus 1. If it's not an ace, then that must mean it's a king, queen, or jack, and all face cards are going to be equal to 10. So we're going to plus 10, no matter what. Now we have counted up the entire hand, and we're going to return value. And that will get us the minimum hand value. Now, why did we do all this? Is because we want to see if they're busting, right? So we're going to say function is bust, and we're going to take an array of cards, and we're going to say const value, and we're going to say get min value. So we're going to get the minimum value of these cards, and we're going to return a Boolean value of if the value of the cards is greater than 21. Because if it is, then is bust should be true. If it's not, then is bust will be false. Export is bust out of this. Let's go back to Blackjack.js, import is bust. Go down here, and we're going to say if is bust. So if is bust, we're going to pass in the cards that we want to check, so the player's hand. If it's bust, then the game is now over and the user has lost. So embed.title equals bust. You lost by going over 21. And then we're going to update. So await.update. And so this is going to be a special kind of update. And the reason why is because we want to remove the buttons. So we can't just do this. I mean, we can. Let's just copy this. Copy this here. We can copy this, but we also want to remove the buttons. So we're going to have to set components to an empty array to remove the buttons. We'll put this one into the else statement. So if it's not a bust, then just update the message. So just like that, you can get rid of these extra lines. So if it's a bust, update the embed title, update the embed, send it back to the user, get rid of the buttons, and then we can also stop collecting. So collector.stop. And we no longer want to collect responses because the game is now over. So why don't we just test this out, see if it's working. So we'll start up the bot again. We'll play a new game of Blackjack. And then, so we have 14 now. Let's hit. Okay, now we have 19. So 19. So if we hit again here, we probably will bust here. And we get a 7. The game is now over. The buttons are gone and the title has updated. It says bust, you lost by going over 21. So there we go. Now we have successfully detected for a bust. So we did this part. Now we need to check for a win. And the only way a user can win by this point, because we haven't seen the dealer's cards yet, is if they get exactly 21. So hopefully you guys can see where this is going. But now we need to make a new function. So else if. We're going to add a new case here. And the condition for this else if is going to be is blackjack, which doesn't exist because we haven't written it yet. So let's go back to our helper functions. And we'll say function is blackjack. We'll take an array of cards just like is bust. And what do we got to do here? So we're actually going to use this get min hand value function. And I'm thinking that maybe we should actually rename it. I named it min value so that you understand what is bust is going to do. But I think what's better, we can call this get best hand value. And the reason I'm saying that is because we're going to make some modifications so that we count the aces as 11 unless that causes us to go over. Otherwise, we'll treat it as a 1. So let's change this in the is bust to get best hand value. And then we'll just have to make a few modifications to this to account for aces. So we'll add a new variable here called ace count, and we'll start that at 0. Every time we hit an ace, let's increment ace count. And then instead of treating them like 1s, let's treat them like 11s by default. Then, once we make it out of this loop, we're going to add a while loop here, and we'll say while the value is greater than 21, and we still have aces to count for, then we need to treat those aces like 1s instead of 11s. So we'll say value minus equals 10. So we'll decrement the value by 10 because we added 11 here. So 11 minus 10 would give us 1. So each ace would then be counted as 1. And for each of those aces that are still over 21, we'll keep doing this because you could have multiple aces, and then we'll decrement ace count. So this will run through every ace, and if we have to, decrement by 10 to make it a legal value. Then we will return the value regardless. This will give us the best hand value, so the best possible optimal hand value, including aces. We can use that for is bust, and then we can also use that for is blackjack. So for blackjack, we can say const value equals get best hand value, cards, and instead of checking like we did in bust if value is over 21, we can check if the value is 21. So it's going to be true if it is 21. If it's not 21, it will be false. So then we can go back to blackjack.js. Actually, we need to export this. Is blackjack. We can go back to blackjack.js. Export this is blackjack. Go all the way down here to the else if statement. And we can say if is blackjack past the player hand, then the game is over and the user has won. So we'll say win result. Remember that win result variable? The winner is now not the dealer. The winner is now the player. So we'll change it to player, and we'll change the embed.title to equal blackjack. You won by getting 21. So they're a winner at that point. And then we can say await i.update embeds past the embed. So at this point, we can also remove the components. We no longer need the buttons because the game is over because they did get blackjack. And then we can also, just like we did for bust, we can stop the collector of responses to this embed. Now, what we also want to do here is we also want to increment their balance. So if we go to db user helpers, so we have this decrease balance, let's just make a very similar function. Let's just copy it. I'll put it above it. And we'll make this one to increase the balance. So increase amount, and instead of increasing by the negative amount, we'll just increase by the positive amount. So we will pass increase balance, export that out, go to Blackjack, go to the top. We'll also take increase balance. And then if they just so happen to win Blackjack, then we are going to want to increase the balance of the user ID, pass in the user ID, the guild ID, the server, and then the amount we want to increase their balance by. And this will be wager, so how much they wagered, and then we're going to do times 3 because they got a Blackjack. And so the reason why we're tripling their money here is because, remember, we already decremented their balance by the wager by this point. So let's say they bet 10 coins. We already have taken 10 coins for them just to play. And then if they win, we're going to triple that. So we're going to give them back 30. Their net profit will be 20 coins, thus tripling 10. So they got 30 back, but they paid 10 to play. So they got 20 extra coins. If they win by value later, then we're going to give them wager times 2. So again, if they bet 10, we're going to double it, give them 20 back, which makes their net profit 10. Else, we're going to update the embed just like normal. This will be in the event of if it's just a regular play and they just keep playing, right? They keep playing. We're not removing the buttons here. So we're only checking if it's a bust or if it's a win. Otherwise, keep playing as normal. So this will then keep on the point of until they click stay. So either they click stay and it goes to this case, or they bust, or they get a Blackjack. One of those 3 options has to happen. So now the game is in a pretty good state. Let's check. It would be hard to hit a Blackjack on command here, but we can try, I suppose. So let's bet here. So we have 17. I'm going to hit. And I got, wow. The first try I got Blackjack. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. First try I got 21 while I'm recording this, guys. No editing there. I literally just swiped up and got 21. First try. Okay, so now we know that the Blackjack works. It is checking if Blackjack. It is checking for the 21 value. Let's check a bust real quick. And I got another Blackjack. I got another Blackjack, instant deal Blackjack. So we need to handle the case where what if you're dealt a Blackjack? This is a valid case. Let's use this function. I'm so glad this came up right now. If you're dealt a Blackjack by default, then I think you should still win Blackjack. So we can just check if Blackjack at the top. Right here where we deal the hands, we can say check for instant Blackjack. So this will be right below where we initialize the hands with 2 cards each. We will know by here if it's a Blackjack. So the good thing about having the helper functions is we can just check if is Blackjack. And we'll just check the player's hand for now. And if the player has a Blackjack, I'm going to want to do the same exact things we do here. So we don't care about win result here. We don't care about embed, or we do care about embed title. So we'll copy that over. So I guess we should actually put this below. Put this below the embed. Blackjack, you won by getting 21. What else? We need to increase the balance of the user. So I'll copy that, put that here. And then we could just return, and we don't need to make the buttons, we can just return await interaction. So return await interaction dot edit reply. And then we can just send the embed. Embeds, embed. There we go. Again, that will probably be really, really difficult to test right now on command, but I could force it. I could force it if I have to. Yeah, let me force it. So I'm not going to initialize this way. I just want to see if it will work if the player starts with this. And I'll just give them really bad cards. There we go. Okay, so I have King Ace by default. Let's see what happens. So this should hit Blackjack, but I cannot believe that I hit Blackjack just like that. Crazy. Okay, so now it should give me instant Blackjack. And it says Blackjack, you won by getting 21. There we go. So it looks like it's working. So let's just remove those changes, uncomment that out, and there we go. So now we have a case of check for instant blackjack for the user, and then the game is over, just like that. We don't need to do all this extra logic. So now let's handle the case where we hit stay. So we have 4, 7 plus 4, which is 11. Hit, we have 20. So I would stay in this case. I would hit stay and nothing happens, right? Because we don't have the logic for that. We need to implement this part where we click stay. And what happens when we click stay? Well, when we click stay, we want the dealer to reveal their card. Probably want to check if the dealer has a instant blackjack. We're going to want to keep pulling cards for the dealer until they're at 16 or over, and then they're going to stay, and then we're just going to compare the cards by value. So that sounds like a lot, but trust me, it's not. It's not a lot. We can do it. We can do it if we want to do it. So let's go into this else case, and we're going to handle if the player chooses to stay. So first things first, guys, we're going to make a for loop, and basically we're just going to infinitely pull cards until the dealer is at 16 or over 16. So first, let's make a while loop. So while, and the first condition will be if is bust, right? So if the dealer has bust, then we want to end it. If the dealer has a blackjack, and we'll pass the dealer's hand. So we'll say while the dealer's hand is not a bust, and while the dealer has not hit a blackjack, then what we're going to want to do is we're going to say card value. We're going to say await draw a new card. We're going to draw a new card for the dealer. So we'll say pass the deck ID in there once again. And then we're going to push that into the dealer's hand, that new card value. So this is just drawing a new card and then putting that card into the dealer's hand. And until that is a bust or a blackjack, then we're going to basically do that infinitely. But there's that other case, right, guys, for when the dealer needs to stay. And it's if the dealer is at 16 or above, then they need to automatically stay and stop drawing new cards. So we'll add a new condition here, and we'll say if the dealer does not have a stay, right? So if not dealer stay, we'll pass in the dealer hand and add that condition here along with the bust and the is blackjack. So this is not defined yet, and we have to go do that. So let's go to blackjack helper, and let's write the logic for that. We can add a new function here. We can say function is dealer stay. Take the cards in. We're going to say const value equals get best hand value. Take the cards, and we'll return if the value is greater than or equal to 16. So it's a stay if the value is greater than or equal to 16. Let's go back. Oh, actually, first, let's export that, of course. Is dealer stay. Go back to blackjack.js, and now let's import that here. Is dealer stay. And then there we go. So now this logic would read, while the dealer is not staying, their hand has not bust, and they have not hit a blackjack, then draw a new card infinitely. So we're just going to keep drawing. So then once that's done, one of those conditions is met, whether they have stayed, their hand has bust, or their hand has a blackjack. Then we want to check for which one it was, right? We're going to check for the result. So we got to check for bust, wins, either win for the user or the dealer, or a draw. Could also be a draw. So first things first, this will just be a big if statement, right? To check all these. So first things first, let's check if it's a bust. So if bust, dealer hand. If it is a bust, then we'll say, then when the win result is the player. Because the player will win if the dealer win over 21, right? The player wins. So then embed.title equals dealer bust. You won since the dealer went over 21. So that's what the title will be. And then if they did win, what does that mean? We also want to increase the balance, right? So user ID, guild ID, and then this case, this is just a normal win, so we'll double their wager. And then else if, the next case, so that will be if the dealer went over 21. The second case will be if it's a player win. So where you want to check if the dealer won by value. And the only way to do that would be another helper function, guys, another one. So we're going to go back to Blackjack helper and we're going to make a new one. It's called function is player win. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take the player cards, we're going to take the dealer cards, and we're going to decide which value wins. And the way we do that is we're just going to get the best hand value for each player. So we're going to say const player value is equal to get best hand value for player cards. Then we're going to check the dealer's value. So we're going to say const dealer value equals get best hand value, and we're going to check the dealer's cards. And then we're just going to return if the player value is greater than the dealer value. So this will tell us if the player has won. So if this is false, then what do we know? We know that it's either a draw or the dealer wins by value. So while we're here, why don't we just do the last one, which will be if is draw. And this is going to be the same thing. It's going to take player cards, it's going to take dealer cards, and then we can do the same exact thing. We can just copy all these lines, except the only difference will be is it's not if the player value is over the dealer value, but instead if it's equal to the dealer value. So if they have the same value. So we have both these functions and we can pass these in. So player win is draw. We have both of those. We can go to blackjack.js, import both of those. So is player win is draw. So we have those. And then let's go down here and let's just finish this logic. We're so close, guys. So second thing is we want to check if it's a player win. So if it's a player win, we'll know that by passing the player hand and the dealer hand. Then we'll say win result is equal to player. Just like before, we'll update the embed title and we'll say you won. And we'll just say you won since you had higher value hand. There we go. And then we'll increment their balance just like before. User ID, guild ID, wager times 2. Else if we'll say if it's a draw, so that's if they won by value, but if it's a draw, we'll say if is draw. We'll pass in the player hand, and we'll pass in the dealer hand. Then we'll say win result equals draw. Embed dot title equals draw. The game ended in a draw. And in this case, if it was a draw, this is up to you. You can make them lose if it's a draw if you want, but I'm going to give them their money back, okay? I don't want them to be angry with me. It was a draw, fair and square, so I'm just going to give them their wager back that we took before. Just give them their wager back. So they lost basically no money in that event. Then we'll say else if. The second to last thing we got to check is if it's a blackjack for the dealer. So if it's a blackjack, dealer hand has a blackjack, then womp womp, the user will lose, unfortunately. And we'll say dealer blackjack. And we'll say you lost since the dealer got 21. Okay, and then the last case is the else case. So if it wasn't a dealer bust, if the player did not win by value, if it was not a draw, and the dealer did not get blackjack, then the only other case would be if the dealer won by value. So we could just say dealer won. We could say dealer won, and we can just say you lost since the dealer had higher value hand. And that's it. And those are all the cases. So we checked for win. We checked for the bust. We checked for all the win conditions, and we checked if it was a draw. So now all we gotta do is send back the information with the updated embed. So we'll update the embed fields so that we show them the cards. So we'll say name, dealer cards, and then we will pass a value. We will format those cards, format cards, dealer hand, and this time we won't pass in false because we don't want to hide the cards anymore. And then we'll just pass it in like normal, and then we'll say your cards, value, format cards, and we'll say player hand. And then await i.update. We're going to pass in the embeds, and we're going to also pass in the components because we also want to get rid of the buttons here also because the game is over. And then no matter what happens here, we want to stop the collector because remember, if they hit stay, the game is over no matter what happens, right? So that's it. We'll stop the collector, and that's our whole collector logic here for this collector on.collect. So that will work now. What we'll do next is we'll just want to handle if the collector timed out, and we can update the footer text of the embed to tell them how much money they won or lost. So we'll say collector.on end. So when the collector is no longer collecting, we'll say async. We'll put a placeholder here because that will just be how many the items that were collected, but we don't care. And then we'll get the reason. We want to know the reason. So we'll say if reason equals time, then throw an error, and we'll say blackjack game timed out. And remember, the errors will be caught by here, and then edit the reply with the error. So then let's say let footer text equals, and we'll by default say you lost wager coins. So this will be the loser message, and by default they'll be losing. But remember that variable that we had now tells us the win result of who won. So we can check that here. So we'll say if win result is equal to draw, because remember we set the win result here if it is a draw. So if it is a draw, then we'll update the footer text to be you did not lose any coins. Okay, just give them the sanity to know that. Else if win result is equal to player, then there's two cases, right? If it's blackjack, so if is blackjack, player hand. If it's a blackjack, then we can update the footer text and say you won wager times 2 coins. And so here I'm just putting the net profit. So even though we increased by times 3 when they got blackjack, where is it? Here it is. We increased by times 3. That's not how many they won because remember we took their wager at first. So I'm just going to say how many coins they won, as in their net profit. Otherwise, they won their wager amount. So otherwise, footer text would be you won wager coins. So however much they bet, that's how much they won. If they bet 10, they won 10. So let's get out of this if statement, and then I'll say embed.footer equals text footer text. Update the embed, and then we'll just say await interaction dot edit reply, and then we'll pass the embeds there, embeds, and then we'll pass the components. We'll clear the components here, so they should be cleared anyways by this point. But yeah, that's the logic. So now let's test it out. We haven't tested it out in a minute. Let's test it out and see what happens. So let's go over here. We're going to play blackjack for 20. So the dealer has a king and a hidden card. and we have a 7 and a 6, so we have 13. I'm going to hit on 13, and I went over, and I lost 20 coins because that's how much I gambled. So yeah, there we go. Let's play again. So now I have 18. I'm going to stay on 18. And the dealer hit blackjack. Okay, that's great. So this is a case where the dealer had an automatic blackjack. The dealer was dealt a blackjack on the very first time. And I stayed. They revealed the cards. And the dealer got a blackjack. So yeah, that's that. Let's play again. Let's see what happens. 5 plus 6, that's 11. I'll hit on 11. And I got a blackjack. There we go. I got 11 plus 10 and I won 40 coins. There is one more thing we have to do. And one thing we have to do is, because remember earlier in the video I said we're not going to do an ephemeral message. I removed the ephemeral message, which means this will be going out to all users. If we console.log the interaction here, we can see who the person is that is doing the interaction. So I'll say, but I'll just stay. And I won because higher value. So I had 17 here, dealer had 16, dealer stays on 16. And then let's see the interaction. So I printed the interaction. This whole long thing is the interaction. See, there's interaction.user.id, right? So what we'll want to do is if i.user.id does not equal user ID, the user ID who used the command, then we're going to return. So we only want to process this command. I'll write a comment here. Only process button click for user who used command. Okay, so that will just be one small minute change that we'll want to make. Last thing is to uncomment the line testing code that we commented. You could keep it commented if you want to test, but there we go. It will decrement the balance. Let's start it up. One last test real quick. Let's check the balance command. Balance, we have 280. Let's do an all-in bet of 280 I set a limit of 100. Okay, only can do 100. Okay, that kind of messed up the flow, but that's okay. So I have 11, 12, 13 here. I'll hit. I got a 4. So now this treats as a 1, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll hit on a 7, of course. I got another ace, so that's 8. 8 plus 9, which would be 17. I'll stay on 17. It's getting dangerous. And the dealer hit a blackjack. So, sometimes that's just how blackjack goes. I lost 100 coins. Let's see if it decremented my balance properly. I should now have 180. There we go. So yeah, guys, that's how you play blackjack in Discord.js. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget you can get the source code in the description below off my website. Let me know what else commands you want to see, what other gambling commands or any commands you want in the Discord bot to be. Remember, I'll figure out how to code it and I'll teach it to you. See you guys in the next one. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you're not subscribed. Please guys, liking helps my channel so much. It tells YouTube that you actually enjoyed this video. Seriously, it actually works. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one, and thanks for tuning in. Peace.